Well, welcome out there once again to my show. Always a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to have you out there in the audience. Before I get going, I want to wish everyone out there a Merry Christmas. That'll be coming along this weekend, and I hope you enjoy yourself with your family. And remember, it's a religious holiday. It's not all about gift giving and partying and drinking, so take that, with some caution, and have a good Christmas. I want to give out the tip of the week, the legal tip of the week, and this concerns one of the items is a variance. When people want to do some work, sometimes that relates to their property, and in order to perform the work, they might not be able to do it because it's in it doesn't conform with the zoning in their area. For example, if it's a single-family area and they want to add another apartment, well, that's really not conducive to that zone, because it's a single family. They add another family or an apartment that would make it a two-family, so they have to get a variance. And people are not automatically given variances. There has to be some sort of a hardship, and it's not financial. It's not because your mother-in-law lives 10 miles away and she'd like to live with you. That's not the purpose of a variance. A variance has to do with the soil, topography, or configuration of the land. And a lot of people appear before the Zoning Board of Appeals, for instance here in Fall River, in regards to their application for a variance. And there are objectors, many, not always, but sometimes there are people who object to the grant of a variance. And these are the things that the objectors have to keep in mind. Has the petitioner, does the petitioner qualify as far as, well, maybe the configuration, the piece of property is not a nice triangle, square or rectangle. Maybe it's more triangular in shape. It's not easy to get a precise setback. Sometimes we'll say you have to set the building back or whatever you're doing X number of feet from the sideline or the front line or the back line. Not always easy to do. So a variance is required. You first of all, you stop off at the building inspector's office for a building permit. If you don't get the building permit, you're asking for trouble. And when you do get the building permit, if you are granted a building permit, that permit has to be posted on the property so people can see it. And one thing about a building permit, your neighbors are not going to be notified. So that's why it must be displayed very conspicuously. And if the building inspector says, no, you can't get a building permit because your property doesn't qualify, then you have to seek the variance through the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the other thing I want to mention is that sometimes people get involved with lawsuits that concern land, and there's a method of posting, well, I should say notifying people that there is some controversy concerning the land, and what it's called is a lis pendens, and that is only issued by a judge. So if a judge allows a lis pendens, you can take that document and you can file it down the Registry of Deeds. So if someone is interested in that property, they'll be notified through a title search that there's a controversy in regards to that property. So that's a pretty important thing, a lis pendens. And you just can't file one down at the registry. You need to have some sort of court action. So we got those things out of the way. We're going to talk about buying a house. Recently, one of the tech assistants here at the studio purchased a house. And it took a while, like usual, and he had to go through pretty much a process of steps needed to purchase a house. And we're going to talk about some of the things that he had to do. So, I want you to welcome my guest, who is actually in a booth and he's running the cameras, and that's Steve Reese. Steve, how you doing today?
Very good, Richard. Thanks for having me on your show.
Good, good. Steve, you recently purchased a piece of property, and let us know how did you start off in your research in regards to what you were looking for. First of all, what were you looking for in a piece of property?
Well, thank you, Richard. So it took about a year to go through the process. So actually, a little bit more than a year. So it's September.
One thing, Steve, could you turn your volume up?
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's good. Good, thank you.
Okay, there we go. Usually we don't do the interviews like this, so this is a little bit different here. We'll figure it out as we go. So it took about a year to get through the process of going from I want to buy a house to closing on a property. It started with I kind of made a list of things that I'm looking for. I wanted some land, something that I could maybe build a garage on. I wanted a couple of bedrooms, at least one bathroom, and a kitchen, and kind of go from there. Anything more would be a plus. So I began looking at some of the websites. There's a few of them out there that have listings. Just kind of read through and see if there was something that.
So you started on the website.
Correct. Started on the computer.
In the old days, people just rode around neighborhoods. Said, "Well, we want to live in Somerset." They'd ride around Somerset, but you actually went on the internet to make a okay.
So some of these sites are pretty nice because they'll give you pictures of the inside of the property. Some of them will have walkthroughs, with video clips, things of that nature. It all depends on how the agent wants to market this property. And then you can get on a list where you tell it, show me every new house that comes on the market that has these certain features. And you get an email every morning. And you can kind of go from there, and it'll tell you when open houses are coming up and things of that nature.
So you worked along, you actually worked along with some of the brokers?
Correct, yeah, I had a friend of the family who was an agent and helped me out. Because when it came time to actually look at properties, you got to call someone to get you in the door to actually look at it.
If it's listed, you need to go through the listing agent? Correct.
And before we even got to that stage, I had to meet with a bank and get a pre-approval letter.
Oh, yeah.
Most brokers don't want to talk to you unless you either have the cash or you have some sort of pre-approval letter from a bank saying that you're good for that kind of money. Yeah, they don't want to waste their time showing you $1 million home that you'll never be able to afford.
Yeah, in the old days that happened. Brokers would be working with a potential buyer, only to find out in the end the buyer couldn't afford to buy a garage, never mind a house that was substantially worth in value. So you got the pre-approval, you went to a bank, and the letter really states how much you could afford. Is that correct?
Correct. It's not an obligation for them to lend. It's just a piece of paper that says, we looked over your finances. We think that we can finance you for a certain amount. So then from there, you basically started your search. Correct.
Did it take a while? Sometimes, you might look at half a dozen houses, a dozen houses, or even land, and things don't really show much for you. In your situation, was the process satisfactory? In other words, did you reach something that you liked pretty early on in the search?
Not necessarily early on. As I started looking at the payments, and it looked a little scary initially, so I went to the lower end of what I could afford, and you get what you pay for. And we looked at some really interesting properties, but they were not worth the money. A lot of things that needed a little bit more fixing up than we were really willing to do. or are we looking at foreclosed properties, and that's a whole nother can of worms. It makes things a lot more difficult. Even just getting a hold of an agent to show it to you, never mind the process of bidding on a foreclosure.
Now, so as you were moving along in this process, you did finally find something, and one of the things that is very important when you are looking at a house is to give it a real thorough inspection. Now, some people will go off and get an inspector, a building inspector, a home inspector, to do that for them. Did you get a home inspector first, or did you kind of look around, go down in the cellar, check the roof, check the gutters? What process did you use?
Well, before we got that far in the game, as far as hiring an inspector, we did kind of an initial, when we did our first walkthrough of a property, before we were even ready to make an offer on it, we looked at certain things. So we came into it, I was not concerned about the color of the walls or the appliances or anything like that. I was looking at the structure of the property. We started first on the outside. Okay, does it have plenty of parking? What does the yard look like? Is this something I'll be able to maintain relatively easily? What's the exterior of the house look like? The roof shingles, the siding, the windows, the doors. Is it weather tight? We'll start there. Then we moved into the inside of the house, and we kind of started in the basement.
That's a good place to go.
That were being held up with all sorts of wacky supports and cobblestone foundations, and just avoided those because that was going to be a nightmare to either maintain or fix. So I looked for a house that had a poured concrete foundation, had a concrete floor. Looked like it didn't have any signs of any water coming up through the floor or through the walls. We also looked at the floor joist. That was proper dimensional lumber at proper intervals. Was properly supported.
No bugs, no bugs.
No bugs, yes. You want to avoid anything that looked like it was kind of soft. Kind of checked along the sills to make sure that...
termites, yeah.
Termites, ants, other nasty critters.
You have those beetles, something beetles.
Yep, a friend of mine had an issue with carpenter bees.
Oh, carpenter bees.
A mess. You want to look at the heating system. Is it relatively modern? What condition? Is there signs of rust on the outside of it? How's the oil tank look? If it has oil or if it's gas, what do the meters look like? What does the pipes coming in look like? Are they in good shape? We also looked at the electrical service. You want to avoid anything that's got fuses, or you want to anticipate you'll be replacing it. So look for something with proper circuit breakers and a appropriately sized circuit box. And that was what we looked at on the basement, and then we moved up into the house and we looked at the kitchen and the bathroom and the finishes and the fixtures and all that. Made sure that they were in good shape. Looked for wiring, make sure there was ground fault plugs where they belonged. Things of that nature.
Now, how about did you give the water system a cursory pressure check? Right. Sometimes what people will do is they'll flush the toilet and then turn on the faucet in the sink and see or turn on the faucet in the sink first, flush the toilet. If the water pressure, if there's an obvious decrease in the water pressure, that could be a signal that the system is not, that is not functioning proper. Especially if you're in a shower and someone starts, using a lot of water, it affects occasionally the shower head water coming out. Did you do anything of that sort in regards to the water supply?
We did do that test a little later on in the process, and the results weren't as satisfactory as I wanted to see, but I anticipate drilling a new well in the future. We're not on city water, so that changes things slightly. It was a jet system, which works different than a submersible pump. We're getting what we expect to get on that kind of a well, but it's not spectacular. We're looking at about 5 gallons a minute.
But you did have, did you have a little situation with the water?
Correct. After we made an offer and the offer was accepted, there was a period of time that we could go and inspect the property and see if there was anything we kind of missed that was going to be a big deal breaker. During that time, we had a gentleman who has a company that drills wells and services them, and does treatment systems, come in and test the well. It was in the middle of the summer. We had a really exceptionally dry summer.
Yeah.
So we did run the well dry within an hour, but it did recover within the day, so that was acceptable, considering that there was places in the same town that had no water at all. So we're hoping that when we get into the wet season, it won't be an issue. But the well driller also said it was a very shallow well, and we could drill a new well and be able to gain more water.
Well, what did he mean by shallow? How deep did it go down?
About 65 feet, we believe, according to disclosures.
65.
So we're taking the seller's word for it that it's 65 feet, and because of the way that the wellhead is buried, there's no way of actually looking down inside and seeing. Some shallow wells actually have a stone casing that comes up, and you can look down inside. This case, the wellhead was buried.
So, also, now how about sewage? You have town sewage, or you have a septic field?
No, we're on septic. And Rhode Island's a little bit different than Massachusetts.
All right, did you have to go to the title? Do you have the Title V there also in Rhode Island?
Not in Rhode Island. Title V in Massachusetts, and correct me if I'm wrong, at the time of the sale, the seller must replace or upgrade to a proper septic system. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Rhode Island, the rule is a little bit different. They really don't care who does it, but it has to be done within a year.
Okay.
And because of my proximity to a drinking water supply, it was kind of accelerated. So I decided, the seller was offering a credit towards the septic. I told him, why don't you just put the septic in before we close? On your dime, I'll pay you a little extra. Made my offer a little bit higher and have you deal with the headaches of installing a septic system, because I didn't know if it was going to be a conventional, which it ended up being, or an advanced sandbox type system, which could have easily went $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. We got lucky and it was a conventional system in the range of about $15,000, but they did that prior to closing, and that was something that we negotiated. And Rhode Island is a little bit different with the way their rules are set up, but they're going to be phasing out all cesspools regardless of a real estate transaction within a few years, statewide.
So, you went through all that process, which was a bit time consuming, and it seems as though that you had no major problem getting that finished. Now, you had the offer to purchase. You started off with that paper. Is that it?
Correct. Yeah, we made a deposit at that point, and we submitted an offer. The offer was accepted. Then between the two agents, they drew up a purchase and sale. I made a deposit at that point, and at that point, the clock starts ticking once both parties had signed. So then I had to go back to the bank that gave me the pre-approval and do the formal process of applying for the mortgage at that point. Sat down with the banker. It took us about 45 minutes, and a stack of paper about that big.
Yeah.
We had to sign all these disclosures, and that was just the beginning. At that point, the bank starts doing some diligence of their own. They'll do a title search. They have an attorney that prepares documents for the closing. They'll want to.
How did the title? Anything interesting in regards to the title?
I did a little bit of research prior. Depending on your town, you may have some of these records online. I know in Rhode Island, in case Tiverton, we can go online and view all of the documents from, I believe, like 1933 onward. So I was able to go back to the initial division of that particular lot from the larger lot. We saw who the first owner of record was, and was able to follow through the entire paper trail. I was able to see that there was no mortgages currently on the property that were recorded. So I was able to do some of the diligence that was also done in the title search, so I kind of see that there wasn't going to be some issues. During that year of looking at houses, we had done this as well before we'd even go out to look at a house, just kind of take a real cursory look at what does the town have on this property. And there was a few that we'd seen liens and other things that may have become issues in the future if we decided to purchase that house, and we just stayed clear of those just to avoid potential issues.
So no outstanding list pendants, as I just mentioned, mortgages, municipal liens. Any municipal liens?
Not on this particular property. We were just outside of what the town has as part of our water district, so there was no additional fee there for extra assessment. That would have potentially been a lien. It also, being outside of that 1,000 feet to a fire hydrant, also means that I'll be taking a little bit of a hit on the homeowner's insurance because you don't get that discount. But so one way or the other, you end up paying it, I guess.
So you finally did close, and prior to closing, were you required by the bank to show an insurance binder that you have insurance on a property?
Correct. Yeah, a couple of weeks prior to the closing. One of the things I did as soon as I made the application, I received the commitment letter back from the bank stating that we are going to fund this mortgage. I went ahead and approached an insurance agent, got a quote, got that binder in order, and that was sent to the bank. And then the way we had set up this particular mortgage, that's going to be a separate charge that I'm going to pay for. That's not going to be escrowed, but I need to supply that binder and make sure that the bank is satisfied with that insurance policy.
Did you eventually get a home inspector? And we're not talking about, the town building inspector, but a independent company that you heard about them, you read about them. They'll go to a house, they'll inspect the house supposedly top to bottom. They make up a list of things that they think are potential problems. Did you do any of that?
Yes, we did. We had an inspector come out, and he looked over the property. One of the things you have to kind of be aware of, and I'm not sure how much of it's really my fault or whose fault, but that particular day, for some odd reason, the electricity to the house had been shut off.
Oh.
Somebody didn't pay the bill.
Oh.
I don't own it yet, so it's not really my problem, but somebody didn't pay. There was a tenant in place at the time, and so we were not able to test the well. We weren't able to test any of the plumbing fixtures or any of the electrical, so that would have been an additional charge to have them come back out. So we looked at it, kind of a quick overlook of the electrical and plumbing, but we weren't able to do any sort of pressure tests or whatnot. So we ended up coming back another day with a plumber just to look at just the plumbing portion and the well.
Did you get
some things that were left out of that report kind of by necessity there because there wasn't electricity at the property that particular day.
What did the report consist of? I imagine it was a dated and signed report by the individual who was certified, to do home inspections. What kind of a report did you actually get?
There was a document, I believe it was 20 or 30 pages long.
Wow,
a bunch of checklists.
Yeah.
The first few pages were just the legalese disclosures, basically absolving him of some responsibilities, because obviously we can't see inside of walls. There's certain things that you can't, if the power's not on, we can't test, the power, obviously. But the things he could see, so he looked at the windows, the roof, the foundation. He went around the sill and made sure that there was no evidence of anything that would be eating away at the wood. And everything was given a grade from like an A through an F, or it depends on the company. There'll be different scales that they would use in writing that report. Some of it was marked as, okay, needs replacement, needs imminent replacement kind of scale that he would use to mark up the report. And it was broken into sections. There's a section on the basement, a section on the kitchen, a section on the bathroom, things of that nature.
Did he actually get up on top of the roof?
I didn't see that. I had gotten there a few minutes after he had arrived at the property, so he may have, he had a ladder on his truck, so I'm assuming he did. But we could see the roof fairly well from the ground, being a single story, so we were able to kind of assess the condition of the shingles and the flashing kind of from the ground.
So it was basically a pretty comprehensive list of you might say, the major concerns of what a homeowner might encounter in purchasing a house?
I would say so, but the other thing you have to remember too is we were only in there for an hour and a half looking these things over fairly well. I mean, I was there with them, several sets of eyeballs, but once we closed on the house and moved in, and you start playing with things and looking it over, you find things you overlooked. So prepare for that contingency that there's
Well, did you find anything? Did you find anything that we'll say of major concern, not something that's small, but did you find something that you might have said, oh, this should have been noticed?
Something silly, and I don't think it was on that report, but I mean, I should have probably checked this, was the width of the doors. How am I going to get a couch in this house? I'd love to have seen how they got the appliances and the couches out of the house from the previous tenant. The doors were kind of narrow, so that would be something down the line. There's an ability there to come in and do some work on it and widen up those doorways, but it'll be a little bit of a challenge getting everything moved in, just because of the width of some of the doorways. Something simple like which way the basement door swings, where you have to go up 2 steps, close it, and then walk back down. When you got an agent standing right behind you and the people around, you don't really spend that much time really thinking that through, and it's just something I have to address.
So the basement was, he went down the basement, inspected the heating system. I know you had looked at it, but the home inspector was down there doing a repeat process?
Yes, and one of the things, the inspector's looking at it somewhat objectively, and he should be giving it a thorough once over. A lot of us are kind of somewhat handy and think that we know enough to spot trouble, but you get the inspector as a second set of eyes and someone who's kind of seen bad things, and you hope that he would also identify them as well and bring those to your attention.
Well, were you satisfied with the result? You had the home inspector come in. Overall, satisfied with having hired someone like that?
I was, in the sense that we looked at, there was a report and there was some things that needed to be fixed.
Did the bank require it?
The bank did not require it.
All
That was
right.
strictly
Something you wanted to do?
myself, and also a negotiation tool. We can go back to the seller and say, we need this fixed. And we went back and forth, and there was some concessions made, not a whole lot, but that was kind of known getting into this. So if there was something major where there was an imminent danger of this whole house collapsing,
Yeah,
they would give us an opportunity. There was a window that we could back out of that purchase and sale.
Well, Steve, we're pretty much down at the end of the program. I'd like to thank Steve Reese for the report in regards to his purchase of a home. I want to thank him also because he does a lot of good work around here, putting these shows on. Without Steve, none of this would be possible. So, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you're out there looking for a home, take some of the advice that was just given by Steve and consult a broker, of course, a banker, insurance agent, and a home inspector, etc. So, thank you out there for watching, and once again, I hope you have a nice Merry Christmas, and I'll see you, I'll see you next week after Christmas. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.